This is the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley.
Together, we have been making money online collectively for over 10 years.
Our mission is to help you start, learn, and grow a reselling business and to inspire you to turn your paycheck into a daycheck.
The world is changing, and we want to help you change with it. All right, welcome back to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast. This is episode number 5, deciding what you want to resell.
Yeah, this is definitely important right from the get-go, especially if you're a new reseller. Maybe you've been reselling for a little while and you're really not sure what you want your niche to be and you're just kind of all over the place. So having an idea right from the beginning of what items might interest you, what you like to list, because that's a huge, huge thing. If you don't get any enjoyment out of the items that you're going to be photographing and listing, this is going to become burdensome. Figuring out what you want to sell is definitely a really important part of starting to resell, or even if you are already reselling, maybe you're just reselling everything that you can get your hands on, and that's cool if that's bringing you joy. But maybe you're like me a little bit, and I started with reselling clothing. I think I mentioned it in a previous episode. Selling clothes, it has a really low barrier to entry. There's so many used clothes all over this country that are just like waiting for someone to pick them up, and you can get them for relatively cheap. So that's why I started reselling clothing. And it also seemed like all the YouTubers that I admired resold clothing as well. So that's why I started. And it did serve its purpose at the beginning. And then a light bulb kind of went off a couple of years ago. And I was like, wow, I really hate doing this. I loved finding it. I loved going to the thrift stores and garage sales, and I loved finding the items, but I really hated photographing clothes and listing them. And Liz, I know that you've told me a million times that you hate listing pants.
Yeah, and guess what we bought the other day?
A bunch of pants.
We bought pants. And I was like, Casey comes up to me in the thrift store and I'm like, more pants? Are you serious? But I'm starting to get used to it. It's just you have to take a lot of measurements for pants. And a lot of people don't realize, because if you don't, like we include measurements now, and an advantage of doing that is that's more photos that you're going to upload. Then you don't have the messages. Can you measure the inseam or whatever? Trying to be a little bit more flexible, try to enjoy it a little bit more, but I really don't.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you don't enjoy what you're reselling, that's when you tend to build up what our community calls a death pile or a money pile, for those that are really positive out there. And then you start to have a backlog of inventory, which again isn't necessarily a terrible thing, but when it gets to be overwhelming and maybe overwhelming your house or your apartment, then it becomes a stressor. So we want to avoid that if all possible. Today, we're going to talk about deciding what you want to sell and where you're going to find those items.
The biggest thing is, where will you buy the inventory? So not only is it important to think about what you want to sell, but where are you going to buy it? Especially wherever you live, that's going to also depend what kind of inventory you're going to be able to buy. So are you going to go to thrift stores and buy your inventory? Do you like selling used clothing and used items? Do you want to go to garage sales? Maybe you're going to restore furniture and you're going to go to garage sales and you really enjoy that, and that's something that's fun, and benefit is you make money off of it because you can resell it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love the idea of that, but up until last year, I didn't have the space for that at all. Right now, we don't really have a great garage area. I don't really have a whole lot of space to be able to do something like that now either, but maybe eventually I would get into something like that. So keeping the things in mind that we mentioned in the last episode as well. Do you have the space? Do you have the time? Do you have the ability and the tools to be able to flip the things that you have an interest in?
And another thing, I mean, maybe you're into just doing wholesale. Maybe you just want to buy items in bulk and you want to buy from a distributor because you don't want to have to go out to a thrift store and buy one-off items. You just want to be able to contact somebody and say, oh, well, this thing I know I can buy and sell it maybe on Amazon, and I can buy 100 of them and I don't have to go out and try to hunt down 100 from a retail store. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get your inventory, but you really need to think first, what do you want to sell? And like you said, it needs to be interesting to you. Otherwise, you might get bored or have stuff sitting there that isn't going to make money.
And that leads to burnout as well. Especially, when you have a big pile of stuff that you have to list, you're stressed out already, you have goals that you're trying to meet, that's when burnout happens. So we want to help you avoid that if possible.
It's time for another What's in Our Reseller Toolbox. In this segment, we share the latest tips and tools to help you build and grow your reselling business. Let's find out what tool we have for today.
today we have another tip for you. I learned about this one probably 2 years into my reselling journey, and it totally changed the game for me. How to find what is selling and what is selling specifically around you within like 25, 50, 100-mile radius. And we're going to teach you right now how to figure that out. Okay, so how to find what is selling right now. Whatever platform that you decide that you want to sell on, you can go to the search on that platform, type in, like, let's say you're going to specialize or niche down into shoes, footwear. So you can type in, women's ankle booties. Let's say you want to find out what brands are selling in women's ankle booties. So you're going to go onto that platform that you're selling the items on and type in women's ankle booties into the search bar. And then you're going to go to sold or completed items, depending on your platform. And then you can see all of the brands that have recently sold. If your filters are already set to what's sold or just in, you can change those at that point, and then it'll show you the most recently listed or most recently sold items and what those brands are, the prices, all the details that you need. That's a huge advantage. Now, if you want to find out what's selling around you, let's say you want to do more retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, and you want to sell new women's ankle booties, you can do the same search on eBay. This is specifically for eBay. You can do that same search on eBay, and then you go scroll down the left side of the screen on your computer, and you can type in your zip code, and then you can select the radius. It might be 25, 50, or 100 miles around your zip code. And then that's going to give you all of the brands that are selling within a 50-mile radius, let's say, around you. Then you can try to backtrack and figure out, where are these people getting these items? Let's say they're selling a bunch of American Eagle women's ankle booties. Well, they have to be getting them from somewhere. So maybe you have an American Eagle outlet near you, or maybe there's an American Eagle wholesaler or something of that nature.
That is a big tip, because how a lot of people are like, how do I find merchandise? So those are just really good tips to use the platforms, what is selling around you. So then that way you know what to be on the lookout for.
If someone else can find it, you can too.
Back to episode number 5, deciding what you are going to sell will then influence which platform is going to be best for you to resell on. So let's say that you did want to do clothing. Well, you have a lot of options. You can sell on eBay. You can sell new clothing on Amazon. You can sell on Poshmark, Mercari. If you want to do just, maybe you want to get into just sneaker reselling, well, maybe StockX or GOAT's going to be better, because those are actual sneaker platforms. So a lot of times taking a step back, thinking about, what do I want to sell? What do I enjoy selling? That will really determine where you're going to sell it.
One thing that you told me when I first met you was pick a platform and learn it as best you can. So I'm going to pass that advice on to all of our listeners. If you decide you're going to sell shoes and that's what you're going to stick to for now, selling on GOAT or StockX, pick one of those and learn it as best you can. Become a professional on that platform before you move on to another platform. Cross-listing is a great tool to have. Like, it will definitely help out your sales. In case you don't know what cross-listing is, you can cross-list the same item to various platforms. So you could have those sneakers listed on Poshmark, Mercari, eBay, maybe StockX. Having them listed on 4 different platforms will increase your chance, technically, of them selling, because you're having them listed and people will, from all different audiences, will see those sneakers. So it just increases your odds of selling them faster. So back to Liz's advice that she gave to me when we first met, picking a platform, learning it as best you can, and sticking to it. It really helped me avoid a lot of errors and chaos when I first started out. Hopefully that advice serves you guys well also.
And then to end the episode, I want to briefly talk about, depending on what you want to sell is also going to depend on how much you're going to end up spending. So if you want to just do, free items around the house, well, you're not going to need a lot of capital. You're not going to have to spend a lot of money on inventory. If you want to get into holding on to Nike sneakers and using them as an investment, like we have a friend, Josh, who he's a full-time sneaker reseller, and that's what he does. And he's got like 300 pairs of Nike shoes. Well, you're probably going to need a big bankroll for that. You're going to need a lot of money because it's going to be a higher buy cost. Maybe you want to do just use clothing, and with that, you don't need that much capital up front. So a lot of times deciding what you want to sell will then also influence your budget and how much you're going to spend a month for reselling.
Exactly. You can, like we said earlier, it is a low barrier to entry depending depending on what you want to start selling. You can start with free items. You can go on dollar days and to the thrift store and spend $25. That's how much I spent the first time I stepped foot into a thrift store. And I left with like 2 garbage bags filled with clothing. That's a great way to start building your bankroll. But if, like you mentioned, if your vision for yourself is to build up a Nike inventory, then you're going to need to build a bankroll first and then start.
Right. So when you know what you want to sell, you know how much you're going to spend, you might have $25 that you start with, and then you keep rolling it and compounding it back into inventory. And maybe that 25 turns into 75 and then 200 and then 500. And before you know it, you have a good nest egg to keep buying inventory, keep reinvesting. And that's why we always suggest your goal is to go full time. Just make sure that you don't leave your job. Keep working, keep building that reselling business on the side.
And if you guys want to go full time, we will give you tips and tricks and strategies and tools along the way to help you get there. Just stick with us. We're going to help you as much as we can, but don't go quitting your jobs on us just yet.
That's right. So thank you for watching episode number 5, deciding what you want to resell. Make sure to stay tuned for the next episode, which will be episode number 6, where we are going to talk about picking a platform to sell on.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that day check.